Made with Guinness beer, tender root vegetables, and chunks of hearty meat, this Irish stew is rich, delicious, and super easy to make. Hey everybody, Kristen here. As someone who suffers from a chronic disease, I believe homemade is best, but it doesn't need to be complicated. I had several requests the past couple weeks to share with you a recipe for St. Patrick's Day. And while I have a delicious Instant Pot corned beef and cabbage recipe that you can get by clicking the link above, I felt like it was high time this Irish girl share with you more Irish recipes. So that's exactly what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna show you how to make a delicious Irish-inspired stew. So let's get cooking. To start this recipe, we're gonna hit saute on our Instant Pot and add in a little bit of oil. We're gonna let our oil heat while we season up our meat. Now, it's traditional in Irish stews to use lamb stew meat. However, it's a lot easier for me to find beef, and it's a lot more affordable, even with the prices of beef going sky high right now. I have a little over a pound of meat here that I'm patting dry with a paper towel. That way our meat can get nice and golden brown when it sears. And then I'm gonna season generously with salt and pepper. Once the oil's heated, I'm going to add my seasoned meat right to my inner pot, just in a nice even layer there. And we're gonna sear that for just a couple minutes on each side, just until it's golden brown. It doesn't need to be perfect. My meat looks nice and golden, and so I'm gonna remove it now to a plate. To our inner pot, we're gonna saute some onions and garlic and celery and really build the flavors of this stew. Now, it's a little hard to see in my Instant Pot right now, but I still have a little bit of oil and some fat that's rendered from the stew meat. If you didn't, you would wanna add just a little bit more oil right now. To my inner pot, I'm adding in 1 small minced onion and 1 stalk of celery that's been finely minced. We're gonna saute that up just for a couple minutes until our onion begins to soften. Now, the celery is totally not traditional in my classic beef stew, but I really like the celery in this stew because it adds a nice, bright, fresh flavor that's gonna counteract with some of the bitterness of the beer that we're gonna add here in just a little bit. That's looking good now, and so I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, which is about 3 cloves of minced garlic, and 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. I'm just gonna saute that just for 30 seconds to a minute, just to toast the tomato paste and bring out its richness, and to, of course, toast the garlic and thyme as well. But we don't want our garlic to burn. That'll ruin a dish really fast. And now you know the drill. We must deglaze our pan to get up all those brown bits on the bottom of our inner pot, and there's a lot of them today. So for my thin liquid, today I'm adding a 12-ounce bottle of Guinness beer, extra stout Guinness beer. And then I'm just gonna scrape, get up all those brown bits. Really make sure to get all the bottom of the inner pot. And now we're just gonna let that simmer for a couple minutes to slightly reduce and really develop its flavor. Typically, I tell you that if you don't drink alcohol, you can substitute the beer or wine in a recipe with additional stock. For this Irish stew, I really do recommend a stout beer. It's going to give this Irish stew all of its flavor. The beer has tones of coffee and caramel and just so much rich flavor that to make this stew using only beef broth won't impart the same results. Now we want to hit cancel on our Instant Pot to turn off the saute function after our Guinness has simmered for a couple minutes. And to the inner pot, I'm adding in 2.5 cups of low sodium beef broth. Now, if you like a thicker stew, I recommend only using 2 cups of beef broth. We like our stew a little bit on the thinner side, so I'm using a full 2.5 cups. To further season this braising liquid, I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. The maple syrup may sound like an odd addition, but we need a little sugar to balance out the acidity of the tomatoes and the bitterness of the beer. And the maple syrup pairs beautifully with the stout beer. The notes are very similar. You can certainly use honey or granulated sugar, but for the best flavor, I do recommend using pure maple syrup. Also adding in 2 bay leaves, about about a teaspoon of salt. You can certainly reduce that salt to just a half a teaspoon if you need to watch your sodium. And finally, we need to add in our seared meat back to the inner pot. Now that's it for right now. We're gonna cook our meat first so that we can add our vegetables later so they don't get mushy. Nobody wants mushy vegetables. So we're gonna pop our lid on our Instant Pot. We're gonna make sure our vent knob is pointed towards sealed, and then we're gonna set the cooking time for 30 minutes on high pressure. Don't be tempted to use the stew button. We wanna be in control of the cooking time ourselves so that we can guarantee great results. So you're gonna hit manual or pressure cook and then use the plus or minus buttons to adjust until the time reads 30 minutes. While the meat is cooking, let's use this time to prep our veggies. I have 2 parsnips and 2 carrots that I'm peeling and then chopping into 1-inch chunks. Parsnips are traditional in Irish stew, and they have a nice, sweet, earthy flavor, sort of like a mild carrot. If you don't have parsnips or you can't find them or you just don't want to use them, you can certainly use an additional 2 carrots. Now for the potatoes, you can use russet, you can use Yukon Gold, you could even use red potatoes. I have baby yellow potatoes today, and you want to make sure your potatoes are in larger bite-sized pieces, like 1 to 1.5 chunk sizes. If your baby potatoes are on the larger side, you want to cut them in half, and the smaller ones you can leave whole. Now once the cooking time has elapsed, it is really important to let pressure release on its own for at least 15 minutes so that our meat stays tender. Once pressure has been released, you can open up your Instant Pot. We're gonna add in our veggies. I have those carrots that I chopped and the parsnips, and I have about 1 pound of baby potatoes that I'm adding. We're gonna pop our lid back on our Instant Pot. Make sure your vent knob is sealed if you happen to do a release of pressure after 15 minutes. And then we're gonna set our cooking time for only 3 minutes on high pressure. 3 minutes is all you need to get those vegetables tender and our beef to finish cooking. Once the cooking time has elapsed, you must let pressure release naturally for 15 minutes. Again. That way the meat stays tender and the vegetables finish cooking through. Then you can open up your Instant Pot. Smells so good in here. It almost smells a little bit like coffee. I'm telling you, I wish you guys could smell it. Now at this point, your stew is completely ready to serve, and it's just the way my family likes it. However, if you like stew on a thicker side, what you would want to do right now is you would want to turn your Instant Pot back to saute and let the stew come to a bubble. Only take a minute. And then you want to mix together 1 tablespoon of cornstarch with 1 tablespoon of water until the cornstarch is dissolved. Add that to your inner pot, whisk it in, and let your stew bubble until it thickens. It shouldn't take that long. But I'm ready to dish this up right now. Go in for a bite, just so that you guys know it tastes good. It's a winner, all right. The vegetables are super crisp, tender, and the meat, it's fall apart. But the real magic of this stew is that Guinness. I'm telling you, the caramel coffee undertones, it's just perfection. It's made this Irish girl happy. I hope it makes you guys happy too. But if you're not in the mood for an Irish stew, be sure to check out my next recipe where I share with you how to make classic beef stew using the Instant Pot. Until then, happy cooking.